いたします。ご注意ください。
So that you might bless others. Oh wow! All right. Okay. All right. I don't know if I have the answer, but I'll try.
I like your answer.
I forgot my answer, but what was it?
You talk about efficiency.
Oh, I see.
Burnout isn't real. No, you can't.
Oh, what?
Okay, I'll try. Any other questions? I'm just writing all of them down. I'm trying to figure out how to do this in order. So go ahead. No limits. I won't.
It is 2 o'clock exactly, so we'll just give you the time to go through everything.
All right, the fearless leader has spoken. No, okay. So really quickly, who I am. I'm Mark Bocanegra. I'm a Filipino. My parents are Filipino. My parents were working here in Japan, and I was not a Christian until I went to college. I went to college. I grew up in a culturally Catholic home, but never really believed in Christianity till I got to. I'm going to say that I don't usually say, but I went to Stanford, and I thought I was like, oh, super, like, okay, I got this. I graduated from church, but all my friends became Christian. Were Christian, and they kept inviting me to church. And I actually went to a church called KCPC in San Francisco. So I always joke, I'm born American, I'm Filipino by blood, I grew up in Japan, but I'm a Korean American Christian at heart. So I ate kimchi and that like bean soup after church. Like that was like how I was brought up as a Christian. So I became a Christian in college. I was actually pursuing finance before becoming Christian. I said, like, I'm going to go to Tokyo. I'll make a lot of money, give to the church, serve in the church, as an elder, as a church or something, or elder, deacon, doesn't matter. Like, I'm just going to do that. But what I realized was that pastors or people on the church side were burning out. I always use this analogy, but it's like I could gather as many fish as possible, and the pastors were had fishing nets, and there were so little people like pulling up the fish nets that no fish were getting on the boat, and there were these big holes in these nets, and just flopping out, right? And so I made the decision, so I could make a lot of money, I could have a successful career, so I wanted to become a pastor. I love the word, so I said, all right, I'm just going to be a pastor and pursue that route. So I spent 2 years working in Rakuten at an internet company in Tokyo. After grad, I met my wife in Oyumino Christ Church. I got married in the church next to CCSI. That's where my wife Megumi was the first baptism in that building. So that's kind of the connection there. I went to seminary for 4 years. Came back to Oyumino. I did my residency as a pastor in Oyumino, and after those 2 years, I came here to Kaihin Makari Grace Church. One of the things that was raised is burnout, and I think there's like a double-edged sword here that I like to want to focus on. First and foremost, I think one of the things that I think has been neglected is the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day and to take rest. And I think this is not for just pastors, but for Christians as well. It's a commandment to rest. And if you do not rest, that is not loving the Lord and saying that the Lord is not generous with you. And I think that's kind of like the first thing wherein it's like, it's a sin not to rest. It's plain and simple. It's a sin not to rest. It's a sin to eat to gather manna on that seventh day, right? The Lord was like, what are you doing going out and getting manna? There's no manna for you. The manna that you got yesterday was supposed to feed you. And I think that's what's the reason why burnout happens is because we don't have faith to rest. I think that's kind of like the first, it's a very spiritual, deep problem. I could talk about the specifics. But the double-edged sword is, when you look at the life of Paul, do you think he rested? Like he took a vacation or a sabbatical? He was a pretty busy guy. And so I think it's not just about resting well, but kind of understanding like, wait, what was going on in his, just merely having a rhythm of rest will not be the answer to your burnout. Oftentimes, rest is not about the time that you take to rest, but the anxiety that you feel when you rest, the anxiety that you feel when you do ministry. And I think this leads to that question of like, how do I can talk about the specific of how I manage my time, but I think at the end of the day, it's realizing that you are human and that you have only a limited amount of time in your life. And you have, I would say I guard my time as much as I possible. And it's okay if people think I'm a jerk. If people think like, oh, my pastor, I get like my pastor, you're so like time oriented. It's like, well, if I give more time to you, in my mind, you're robbing time from my wife. You're robbing time from my sermon prep, which means I cannot feed my sheep. Like you're robbing time from if you think of it very specifically like that, where I would say is that where time is the gift that is the most lacking. And we splurge our time on things that are not helpful, and we don't use it well in the way we think about the church. And you asked the question, Anna, about how I at least pastor. It starts with, who's my flock? I can't say for everybody. My flock is not the 26,000 people here. My flock is the members of this church, and I have a membership role, and they're the first priority. When you're a doctor, who do you take care of? Do you take care of everybody in the entire city? No, you take care of the people in your hospital. And you clock in, you do what you can, and you clock out, and that's what happens after that is really up to the Lord. And I feel like that sounds really, really like cold, but at the end of the day, it's me saying, I'm just human, I'm just a pastor, and there are other pastors that will help with that. Let me end with this, it's 2:15 now. You asked me the question, what I think about the decline, what I do think about the future of Christianity. And this leads to the burnout question. It's not my job to think about that. To be honest, I'm not here to bring this Christian population to 1%. That is me overstepping my bounds. That is not your calling. That is not my calling. No one asked you to do that. But the Lord asks you to love the Lord and love the people around you and be faithful to the people who are in. Elijah was really concerned about the revival of Israel. And do you remember that? The very famous, the prophet, he wins. What happened after that? Do you remember? It was supposed to be a revival, but did the revival happen? The reason why people don't remember that, because it's not so happy. Jezebel basically killed all of the false prophets because they didn't show up, and they said, everybody, all of Israel, kill Elijah. And Elijah goes into the cave and he's depressed. And he says, Lord, I thought you were supposed to bring a revival through me. I thought I suffered for all of this and nothing happened. And what does God said? It's none of your business. Elisha is going to do that. But your job's done. Your job's done. Be happy about that. And I would say that's kind of like our call. Like no one called us to see the revival to happen. We want to pray for revival, pray for that, but like we need to be content with what the Lord has given us, whatever fruit that we have, and we should not overstep our bounds. I'm not saying we shouldn't ask for it, But we should, if we have proper expectations of what our calling is, then there isn't this weird anxiety, this weird like Saul-like zeal that gets you into really bad pockets of disobedience. And I think that's where I like to land the plane at 216. Hopefully, I at least kind of answered all of the questions. So,
Thank you so much.
All right.
I'll ask you one last thing.
Yes.
What can we pray for you specifically?
Pray that I would be faithful, that I trust the Lord and be obedient. I